Of all the TV shows to be rebooted in recent years, who would have thought Thundercats would be one to watch out for? I mean, seriously, was this on anybody's radar? But then as the previews for it started coming out, it actually looked kind of awesome. Did it deliver what it promised? Well, let's start at the beginning. Now, first of all, yes, I was a fan of the original Thundercats when I was a kid. The only problem is I haven't seen it in over 20 years, so the only things I really remember are the broad details that everyone seems to remember, like the theme song, Lion-O's famous battle cry, and Snarf being really annoying and using his own name in his vocabulary more often than the Smurfs. So even though there is an element of nostalgia here, for the most part I have to judge the new series on its own merits. It gets off to a great start though, as the art style immediately reminds me of Avatar: The Last Airbender. We meet the new Snarf and Lion-O. Snarf's been reimagined as a feral cat who just meows and stuff. And hey, I have to admit, it's already an improvement. The new Lion-O is played by Will Friedle, and as soon as you get used to hearing him talk without thinking about Batman Beyond, you'll find out that he's the Prince of Thundera, and he's ventured out Princess Jasmine style into the market to buy technology. See, in this world, technology is considered an ancient myth, so buying it is met with the same attitude as buying snake oil from a traveling salesman. But Lion-O is convinced that technology is real, and there's no denying the kid in a candy store look on his face as he starts playing around with what we'll later find out is a high-powered explosive. Along the way, he meets up with Chitara, who, holy shit! Okay, I definitely approve of the character redesigns. Chitara's been sent to keep an eye on Lion-O, but unfortunately he's running late for an important ceremony, so he rushes back to the castle. His father Claudius fills us in on some history and explains that Lion-O has to be tested by the Sword of Omens to see if he's ready to become the next king. Now, I really like Claudius here. He's undeniably tough, but you can absolutely tell that he loves his son and really wants him to succeed. It also helps that he's played by the original Lion-O, but he uses that to project an air of maturity and authority. What we see here is literally the old generation teaching the new one and handing off the title officially. While training with the sword, Lion-O has a vision of the series villain Mumra. Now, it's important to note that at this point, Mumra is considered something of a mythological figure himself, but he is recognized as a force of great evil. So, since this is a warrior race that values tradition, mysticism, and spirituality, and Lion-O has just been shown a vision representing impending doom, he does the reasonable thing by keeping it to himself and pretending he was distracted by some girls walking by the window. Yeah, we'll come back to this later. In the meantime, Claudius bitch slaps Lion-O by saying that the sword has accepted him as the next king, but that Lion-O himself is nowhere near ready to ascend to the throne. Later, the alarm sounds as the kingdom is being approached. It seems to be good news though, as one of the king's generals named Groon has returned from a long mission. He's played by the Kurgan though, so you know this isn't going to end well. You know, wouldn't it be awesome if Clancy Brown turned out to be a super nice guy in real life and was the complete opposite of all these villain roles that he always ends up playing? Just a thought. A feast is held for Groon's return and also to honor the memory of Panthro, who apparently died on the same mission. During the feast, some of the cats start mocking and abusing a couple of lizard people who were taken prisoner. Lion-O steps in to defend them, and quickly being overwhelmed, his brother Tigra and uber badass Chitara back him up as the three of them kick ass for justice! Later, in front of his father, Lion-O explains that the Thundercats and lizards have always been fighting, and apparently the Thundercats aren't entirely innocent here, as they seem to take most of the resources for themselves, forcing the other races to live in poverty. And at the very least, he argues that it was cruel to allow the prisoners to be abused in the way that they were. Now, that's kind of interesting. We have a cartoon here that explores themes of racism, classism, and even shows the protagonists being, well, assholes. And Claudius even explains that they actually are assholes, but it's because they pretty much have to be, or that they run the risk of being taken over by outside forces who would see them as being weak. Now, even though Lion-O's been trained well and can handle himself in a fight, it seems that he's been living something of a sheltered life, and the outside world is a lot less forgiving than he thinks it is. But he still convinces Claudius to let the lizards go as an act of goodwill, hoping to foster a more peaceful relationship between the two races in the future. Oh, now I can see what kind of show this is going to be. My Thunder Kitties, my Thunder Kitties, ho. So of course, later that night, an army of lizards shows up with giant mech suits and everybody dies. Along the way though, Groon turns traitor, Mumra shows up for real, Larry Kenny as Claudius has one last glorious chance to yell Thundercats, ho! And oh yeah, Lion-O has to explain that little matter of why he didn't mention having a vision of Mumra earlier when he was using the Sword of Omens. It seems that because everyone thought he was crazy for believing in technology, though not so much anymore, he was afraid of getting made fun of even more if he said that he saw Mumra. Lion-O, you're an idiot. Like I said before, the reason everyone thought his tech fetish was crazy is because in this world, complex technology is thought to exist only in stories told to children, and he even admitted that he was chasing his boyhood fantasies. But in this culture, it's accepted that Mumra means evil and that the Sword of Omens has special powers. In this context, there was no reason for him not to tell anyone about his vision. I'm actually starting to side with Tigra more than anyone else. Up until this point, we've seen Tigra take on a smug attitude and act superior whenever he's around Lion-O, but frankly, that's because he is. He works harder, and he has more skill, focus, and maturity, but the magic sword picked Lion-O to be king, and that means Tigra has to take orders from his little brother, even though he got the entire kingdom wiped out because he was too much of a whiny little bitch to warn anyone that there was danger coming. I mean, look, Lion-O's a nice guy, and most of the time his heart is in the right place, but that's really the only thing he has going for him right now. Though, to be fair, he did do at least one thing that paid off. Because he set the prisoners free earlier, one of them does come back to help him escape. And so, the main cast assembles, and they learn that they have to stop Mumra by finding an artifact called the Book of Omens. Now, overall, this premiere kicks all kinds of ass. Oh, it definitely has its flaws. The animation doesn't always match the dialogue at times, and there are a couple of plot holes that could deal with being smoothed over, but the real low point, at least in the premiere, comes with the Wiley twins, Kit and Kat. Oh, you don't remember me mentioning them before? Well, that's because they have nothing to do with the story at this point. They're pretty much there just for the sake of being there. I mean, they don't even really interact with the other main characters. Plus, they're played by actual children, and their performances are really flat and boring. There's one scene where they literally see a crowd of people get blown up in front of them, and their reaction is, "Whoa, look out, that could have been us." Everything about these characters just feels like they were added as an afterthought. However, in spite of all of this, the good points definitely outweigh the bad. The art design is fantastic and the action scenes are amazing, especially when the clerics get involved. From what I can tell, the clerics are the spiritual leaders of Thundera, and they're also trained to be experts in combat, as well as being very well read in the mystic arts. So you can think of them as equal parts wizard, priest, and Jackie Chan all rolled into one. Or another way to put it is, yeah, I think that should about cover it. Also, the story seems to be setting up a big world with a big history behind it. There are some really mature themes being explored, and despite my complaints about Lion-O, he's still a very likable character, and it definitely feels like they're setting him up to grow and learn and mature as the series goes on. This is one of the best premieres that I've seen in a long time, and the series has a ton of potential. So it shouldn't be too hard for the rest of the episodes to follow this great setup, right? Right?